2024 meeting of the Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission to order. Staff will please confirm the presence of a quorum.
Mr. Bungathist?
Present.
Mr. Horke?
Here.
Mr. Khan?
Here.
Dr. Keene?
Here.
Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Mooney?
Here.
Mr. Neal?
Present.
And Mr. Woodard?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Full house.
All right.
There are no changes. We have two items to workshop tonight, which we'll get to. But item next is the approval of our minutes of April Fool's Day 2024. Is there a motion regarding the minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion was Victor McCarty, correct?
That's correct.
Just want to make sure I heard the right voice down there, and seconded by Mike Neal. We're all here so we can do this on a voice vote. Everybody in favor of approving these minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed or abstaining? Minutes are approved unanimously. Staff would please review the rules of procedure for tonight's festivities.
Yeah, so for this evening, we do not have any consent agenda items. However, we do have two workshop meeting items. So general procedures for workshop meetings go as follows. The department will introduce the petition stating when the item was last before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission and petitioner will then discuss the changes made to the ordinance using the issue list as a guide for the discussion. Once the discussion has been finished, the department will summarize the final changes that are expected to be made prior to the petition returning to this body for a recommendation. Just some general rules of conduct for this evening. Please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, then we ask you to please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. We'd like to remind those attending virtually to please mute your microphone when not speaking. And that concludes our rules of procedure for this evening.
Thank you. As noted, there are no consent agenda items, so we jump right into the first of the workshop items. That would be the Westwood PUD, petition 2403-PUD-05. Staff can provide an intro, and then we'll hear from the petitioner.
Are there any specific exhibits you want?
You can just do
Concept plan?
that's fine. So yeah, good evening everyone. This item is the Westwood PUD. This item is up for a workshop this evening. So thank you, President, members of the Planning Commission. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The proposal before you is the Westwood Planned Unit Development District. This item is returning this evening for a workshop discussion with the Planning Commission. For contextual purposes, the subject real estate is 10.21 acres in size and is generally located at 18342 Spring Mill Road. This is just south of Sundown Gardens and just north of Urban Apples. This item was last before the Planning Commission for a public hearing at the March 4th APC meeting. Since the petition was last before the APC, the petitioner has incorporated modifications into the proposal, which we will discuss this evening. An in-depth analysis of those changes has been provided in the staff report, but the primary updates that you will see this evening include refining the permitted land uses for the supportive commercial area and refining the permitted architectural building materials. Since the public hearing, additional topics of conversation were also identified to which we anticipate discussing further this evening. Russell Brown of Clark Quinn Law is here tonight. He intends on making a brief presentation on the updates to the Planning Commission. Both the petitioner and staff are available for questions and to facilitate the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Record Russell Brown, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. Chris Henry is here at the table with me, and then we have more Sixpence folks in the back of the room as well, including Shelby and Seth Dempsey, who are actively involved in the business as well. So, as Weston mentioned, front text of the ordinance changes include a refining a materials list, which was done but not before you when we did our public hearing. We have refined uses. We kind of went back and forth a couple of times. I think Councilor McCarty has provided some input, staff has provided some input, and have a more limited permitted use list. I think the goal of that supportive retail area is to be just that, supportive retail, attached retail to the wedding venue itself. So we've listed, kind of narrowed down, including one kind of very specific at the end, which is kind of the dream, but we tried to make sure that that was specifically permitted if and when that became an opportunity. But otherwise, trying to again narrow down intensity and making it something that fits with the proposed use here. We also did modify the setback line as well to mirror what's at Sundown Gardens for the outlots specifically. I know that Plan Commission and council members received an email Thursday or Friday from Councilor Heron, who is immediately south user and had some questions. We're happy to kind of walk through those. We also talked today with staff. This petition was introduced and was filed, I believe, in December or early January. The development team has continued to work over that time to work on what the actual building will look like. We have pretty far advanced further along in that. So we have renderings to look at based on a conversation with staff today. I want to put that in front of this group to get a little feedback, but also with the potential that we would be swapping out what's there for concept images so that we wouldn't be later looking at does this match, does this not match, but have something that actually is looking closer towards what we're building. So I don't know, you want to walk through the email kind of, or do you want to look at the?
Sure, yeah, we can start with the email. You're welcome to lead that if you'd like, or we can, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, I can, if you want to put the site plan back up, we can talk about a handful of things.
Yeah, let's get that pulled up. Is this one sufficient, or do you?
Yeah,
want-
that's fine, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
It actually goes out to right about here for the right of way, but it's just zoomed in a little bit.
Yeah.
But
So,
just FYI.
couple points on that. There was questions about where outdoor band location would be. We talked about potentially an outdoor ceremony space that's contemplated to be here. Any music, DJ, band, string quartet would be, in that performing or in that area specifically. There's no intention to utilize anything on the western portion of the property. So from our perspective, and it's going to have people seated here, so any sound is going to go back in towards the building. I think we're very confident that will be, we already have noise hours, outdoor operation hours included in the ordinance, which mirror what are permitted on the nearby property. So it's our belief that, this layout will have little to no impact or noise spill away from this proposed venue. There's a question about food trucks. Would that be a permitted opportunity? Sure, probably not preferred, may not happen very often, but yeah, I think, Chris, you said in your 200 or so weddings you've done at your other facility, there's been a couple times?
A few times, and more of a curiosity is our utilization of this location and then the specificity of food trucks, is that something that comes under the heading and ownership of the UDO at all, or where does that fall?
Yeah, currently they would not be permitted, so if that was something that the petitioner would be interested in, we would just need to define that, define an area and permit that.
I thought it was by special permit only, anyways.
It does require city council approval.
We've handled
believe.
it two ways
Yeah.
over the years. These uses that have, these event venue uses that are more likely to have them kind of recurring.
Yeah.
We've written them into PUD ordinances as just a permitted use and potentially put some limitations on where they can go and when they can be out there. So that's one way we've handled it, which I think would be the suggestion in this case, if that's the desire.
Let me
But you're right,
confirm-
case by case, event by event, they're.
Let me confirm with my boss in the back, my daughter and co-owner, food trucks, no food trucks. No food trucks, that was easy. I just asked her first.
There you go.
Can you trade places with me?
The Westfield one being big.
We restricted food trucks years ago in anticipation of wanting to encourage permanency in our food and beverages for Grand Park. And in the Grand Park area in particular, it was really highlighted. You've gotta provide us something in real estate, not just a truck, but by going in front of council, there are opportunities for unique events that could be approved, but it's, the only other option is one of those was saying
City
that
council.
you can see if we are agreeable to include that in an ordinance, and then you have some prerogative for it, but it would be very helpful if you were inclined to do that, to frame yourself a pretty tight little window, but if you're not compelled to really need it,
I don't.
this guy would appreciate it to not be there.
Yeah, I am not a fan either, and we can tell stories afterwards why it's never gone well at our current wedding.
Okay.
So,
Well, that should be a non-issue for us then.
If I could ask a clarifying question, food trucks, does that extend to any like mobile food and beverage stations that might move around our facility in our outdoor areas? How, I don't know what the overlap is
Oh,
there.
like an order
Like a
station.
champagne
Yeah.
cart.
Yeah, champagne
Well,
cart
ice
or
cream,
dirt
I wouldn't
station,
think so.
sometimes people like to do ice cream, the handles trucks come out and they'll set up and they're usually like this big. But I don't know what the overlap is there.
You're not
We
gonna
won't-
drive it out on Springville Road, right?
it would
they
probably be a
come-
trade, it'd be a trade.
Yeah, I'm sure that they would come pick it up. It doesn't, the thing that things I'm imagining, I don't imagine that they're drivable themselves.
And I've been to your wedding venue before and I've seen the handles cart
Mhm.
there previously, and it's almost just like something that you would have like in a gas station, only it's on wheels, you can open it, it's a little nicer than that, you can open it up and you get what you want in there, that's kind of what I have seen, and I assume that's what you're talking about.
Yes, that's a
in that
great
regard.
example of something I just wanna make sure is not.
We would just view that as an accessory of a catering operation.
Point of sale.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Moving
you.
on.
Thanks for bringing that up.
All right.
Question?
Yeah, appreciate it.
There was a question about tree credits, and I think, we're, maybe I'm trying to be overly, specific and sometimes just writing in that tree credits, any tree preservation provided meets the UDO standards, and you're given a credit for it. So I don't think we're asking for anything that's not provided in the, UDO as it relates to tree credits on southern buffering. I mean, this is obviously not exact, but there are, a decent number of trees on the western portion of the property. And I think that, that's where we would anticipate that there would be potential credits, available, but,
I'll pull up the site plan and we can,
asking for anything different than what's already permitted by.
yeah, so on the survey, it looks like there's a tree right here, a tree right here, and just a few other miscellaneous existing trees.
And obviously, the only thing there is, if there's a tree there, you don't take down a tree to plant more trees, and so it makes sense to give credits where they're located and in the buffering. But that would be the only way they would be applied, is if they're in the buffering area, from my perspective, so. On the outlots, the outlot question was asked, could we go to a larger lot or a single lot versus two lots? And I think, Chris, Woodward, I think you asked a couple questions during plan commission about that. We would be willing to go to a single lot, to do one lot there. So you eliminate the possibility of having two smaller buildings, likely having one larger building. I don't know that there's interest in eliminating the possibility you could have multi-tenants in a building, because you could have multiple tenants that make sense. If you had just making these up, Shelby, don't kill me, but a flower shop and, a hair salon, those would be exactly supported uses. But to require them to be a, 7,000 square foot hair salon isn't realistic at this location. So I think we're okay with one lot, but I think that the concept of having only a single use building probably doesn't do what anybody's envisioning here, which is create that supported retail, create a little bit of visual screening as you come off of Spring Mill Road. I don't think it captures the vision of what we were pursuing here. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about permitted uses in retail already. Happy to hear feedback if there's other uses that are on the list or not excluded already. I feel like that was a pretty good list we've worked through. There's some questions about the lot standards for the supported retail lot standards. I would suggest that they are appropriate given the context of what setbacks are nearby. We already provided there would be no parking temporarily put double row parking on Spring Mill Road. I think to further hem in where parking can be located, it starts to really hamstring design, how design could work. And obviously, the use to the south has a drive and parking nearby to the lot line. So we do feel that what's requested here, first of all, that we can do appropriate landscaping in those areas, and also kind of meets with the intent of what's most adjacent to Spring Mill Road through this process.
Russell, if I could.
Mhm.
I think one of the concerns that Counselor Heron had raised was going ahead and building out buffering from, if I might, just the end of this mound on down. We would be absolutely amenable to that. I think that we could go ahead and establish permanence of that. I don't think we'll end up having to remove anything should we enter into a development of that space, so that's an easy one if, I believe that was what he was
Yeah,
referencing.
and just for reference too, we'll pull up this is the landscape markup that we prepared just to show what the PUD would be proposing. So along the southern buffer here, you can see the PUD ordinance would require a 20-foot buffer here in green. And then this buffer here would be the buffer that we would be discussing right now to be, it appears the petitioner is committed to installing this when this property develops. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'd be
Or-
happy, we'd be
You'd be
happy, I
happy
think, to address Counselor Heron's concerns, to go ahead and extend the green.
Oh, extend the green.
Yeah,
Okay.
extend the green and go ahead and execute that at time of construction.
Okay, that's what I wanted to confirm, just making sure we were talking about the same thing here.
I mean, we have some just natural concerns, there'll be traffic coming in and out of that to the cidery into their event center, and I think we're gonna wanna begin to block lighting or headlights and the like there too,
Okay.
so I think it's a good recommendation on his part.
Gotcha. Thank you for that
And-
confirmation.
Your lot 2 and 3, you are going to sell those to somebody else who may come in and want to do that, or are you doing that project?
That is,
yourself?
that would be us.
You'd be doing that project,
And we would
okay.
consolidate those into a single lot
Got
instead of two,
Okay.
with parking behind. Our vision would be that the building would set closer to the road. I don't know what the APC's vision on it would be. I'd rather not have parking out in front of the building if we can keep from it. I think aesthetically so we'll have ability to share a couple of
Yeah,
rows
'cause
on the back.
I think currently the PD language would permit one double row.
Yeah, that's correct, that's all it said.
I mean, if you want to eliminate that to satisfy that, that's up to you, but if you want the flex,
Do you want me to eliminate that or not? Russell, I
your
only
choice.
do what he tells me.
yeah.
And Shelby, whatever Shelby tells me.
I just wanna let everybody know that right now the PD ordinance would permit one row parking.
One row, okay.
Are we discussing the area along Spring Mill also? In front of those two buildings in Spring Mill? Is there gonna be berming and landscaping there to kind of block the
Oh.
buildings?
Along the external street,
Right.
yeah,
I don't see.
I'd have to look at the ordinance, but
It's not required on
yeah,
commercial uses.
external street
Mounting
frontage line.
is.
Mounding wouldn't be required here. Let me,
But
Mounting would
you
be
wouldn't
not,
need-
particularly if they put cars, one lane of parking, mounting would block the parking that would be there.
We currently only require mounding along streets and industrial uses. And that's I just think it's a 3-foot undulating mound.
ordinance language.
But we do require
External street frontage landscape.
shade trees, shrubs, and evergreens. I don't recall the exact number.
But if you're agreeable to move the parking to the west and have the buildings at whatever the appropriate setback is from Spring Mill, then we don't need to talk about parking there and just default to the UDO landscape requirements for.
Yeah, I think
That would be-
we'd like to remove that double row parking from the front of that building. I mean, if we still have to have mounting, that's fine, cause we're gonna want, to the extent that it doesn't hide the building, and if we need to come back for additional approval.
Yeah.
Our landscape architecture company, as you can imagine, is the good folks from Sundown Gardens, and they spend my money like it's mine, so it's gonna be nice. So,
Imagine that.
So to answer your question,
Shouldn't have much of a delivery charge though.
Yeah, right, yeah. To answer your question, the ordinance language right now says 6.8 regarding external street frontage plantings shall apply, but such plantings shall be required to be planted until development occurs. And that's typically to prevent any destruction of that landscape if the building were to go in, so. This would be separate from the buffering along the south that we were just talking about, so.
Do you have more, Russell?
I got one more on the signs. I got two more. So signs, there was a question about signs. I think our intent here and what I intended to draft in the ordinance, and this is because Weston schooled me on it last fall, was we intended to have one sign. And we laid out the size of the signage, and that's, my recollection is that a commercial use is entitled to one non-residential center sign, and we were accommodating that would be what was permitted here. And then we created the size of it, which I think it's 9 foot by right, and so I think I did 10 foot, so just a slightly larger. And then I think the square footage is pretty comparable, I think it's 60 or 65.
Yeah, so just for everyone's personal education, we would treat this development as a center, so a center is permitted one sign. But the UDO is designed that way to prevent multiple monument signs littering the right of way. So this language here would just refine how tall that sign would be and the maximum size of it. That's what that language would do here. So
Intent that your end users would share that monument signage to identify the retail uses.
So just to be clear, the property is permitted a center sign today. This is just providing some parameters to it to help everyone understand what the end result would be.
It's not asking for additional signage that they're not already permitted.
And we also did something similar in the Urban Apples PUD that Councilman Heron brought forth, so that would be.
It's the same sign.
It's very similar. I can't remember the exact measurements off the top of my head, but I do know that the PUD specifically mentioned signage and location. The location is a little bit unusual. There was actually a site plan that showed where it was going.
Only two other comments, I think, was sunset clause. Our preference would not be to include that. I think, that's something that I've just pushed against.
I second.
And then there's a request to have chain link fencing utilized during construction. I mean, I think our view of that would be that appropriate safety construction fencing would be installed, and I personally don't believe the UDO is the PUD is the place to include that. So I think we've walked through all of those concerns. And then I think the last point that we would offer is to have
Do you want to do the architecture now?
yeah, we'll do
Okay.
architecture.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and pull that up. Do you want to point me
It's the very bottom one.
this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and pull this up.
I think if you went to 5, that's probably the best view.
Okay.
So I maybe let Chris just kind of explain how we got here and kind of what vision is and
I think, if you don't mind, Weston, I'd love you to just get a sense of the building, if we roll back up to the floor plan real quick, and you could begin.
Yeah, do you want me to roll back up to the floor plan? Right,
Please.
right here, okay.
Yeah, so I'm sorry.
I didn't want to jump around too much. And
I just thought, we appreciate your support, yet several of you had very kind words for us at our initial meeting, which is also where I showed up tonight during the abatement hearing, and I sat through 3 agenda items and realized we were in the wrong place, but it's essentially a 1.5 story building, and our single intended use is to be an event center and a wedding venue primarily. But our vision is to have the ability to seat up to 350 people in the ceremony site, which is the upper left. You can see all the smaller chairs. We'll have about a 1,400 square foot foyer for smaller events, for cocktail hour, and then we want to be able to move people into a dedicated reception space so folks can get married, whether independent, can get married and celebrate all in the same building, and that's our vision. We've got a small courtyard here in the back, large back of house, and then what you see over here on the left is the bridal suite, which is the only thing that sits upstairs, and we'll have a small balcony on the eastern facing side. Just to give you an orientation of the building.
so this
Go
is
ahead,
this is external, that's outside balcony, and
It
this is inside balcony.
There will not, yes, I'm sorry, that is correct,
and then this is the main entrance right here.
Yes, sir.
Is that, okay.
Yeah,
This
so
one?
your balcony would be over the main entrance.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Sorry, Weston, and yeah, we can go to about page 5 now.
Okay.
I'll quit rambling.
Oh, no, you're good. So here we are at 5, yep.
But we have, it has been quite a process to build, to design a building from scratch. I know you are all familiar with KRM. I think they've worked on, I think the Westfield Public Library is about to have its grand opening, or is it already passed?
In July.
In July. So KRM has their fingerprints on that project as well. So it's been quite a process from a blank sheet of paper to get to this point. So things, our inspirational photos are probably a tad different. We've not picked colors yet, but this is the functional building we think we'd like to build. And lots of light to the extent that we can afford to do that.
So to orient, so this is reception area.
That's a hallway there. We'll have some offices there on the other side. It is going to be the reception area. We've got a meeting later this week where we're gonna install a clear story above the reception area to try to drive more light into that space, but that'll just be probably a 15 by 15 clear story that comes up out of the reception area to drive light in.
And this is the ceremony
That
area.
is our ceremony space, yes, sir. So I think staff had identified there may be some incongruity with some of the things we had put together in the inspiration photos. I hope this is nicer, I hope you like this better, but we thought we ought to provide some more specifics. That's the footprint that we're gonna go with. We'll continue to iterate a little bit on some things here and there, but for the most part, that's the footprint, and that's color palette. Shelby, it's gonna be lighter, it would be lighter. I don't know if we'd say it's not gonna be, I wouldn't say white, but maybe ivory.
For the exterior materials?
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree with that. Not bright white, but more of a bone or a stone. Something
With
neutral,
a
but
mixture of, with the mixture of stone and brick. Around the back, by back of house, we think we'd like to do some less expensive materials and invest in the front of the building, as you can see.
If you go down a couple, it has some images just of the, so internal, that's walking into the,
Yep, our vestibule there. Now, if we go down, you could, that's our foyer, and then our next, another look back from the foyer. It's our hallway down the left there a little bit. Oh, there it is. And we wanted to go with a segmented arch. We liked that segmented arch versus a square top window. We just thought that was a bit more elegant, because you talk about somebody spending my money like it's my money. My daughter has got visions. Goodness love her. The next one, that's our bridal suite. That's our second floor. And then I think our ceremony space. That will be an elevated, it'll be up 2 steps, so that folks in the front can have a good view from everyone on the floor, can have a good view of that. So, and that's a view back. Russell had pointed out that upper balcony.
reception space.
just use your imagination a little bit. It's a little clinical right now.
So this is, and on the site plan, you notice we call it the hideout or something of that.
The hideaway.
Hideaway.
My daughter has since renamed it Henry's. We are expanding it a little bit, and hopefully that will meet with your support, but,
Let's see where it's located.
well, if you wanna roll back down, Weston, I'll just give you a little preview. Oh, other way, sorry.
Right here.
A little preview, we're gonna add about 20 feet onto the end of the building there, and about 10 feet onto the end of the building here. It'll end up being about 2,000 square feet. And our vision down there is to have a combination boardroom, smoking room. So if any of you are open to a cigar from time to time, you'll wanna schedule your off-sites at our place in January. But we wanna have a smoking room, big leather couches, big leather chairs, and we'll have a separate HVAC system in there. Out here, we'll have a small patio with a gas fireplace and a overhead garage door and a bar, so a lot of ease of movement there. We're gonna make it a little bigger so we can support up to 30 people in maybe a training table kind of environment if you need to go off-site for training. So.
Then that's, a little more further refined from what was included in the inspiration images as well. That's all I had.
Why did you preclude tilt-up as one of the material, precast from one of the material.
Why did we not choose to pursue that?
I think it's specifically prohibited in the latest text, isn't it?
It's really just a visual for the elevated fit and finish that we were pursuing.
I mean, as things go back and forth with commodities between concrete and steel and everything else, I'm fine with tilt up as long as you still, I mean, you can do brick embossed and all kinds of things and still get the same look, so I was surprised to see that.
Yeah, we were trying to just limit, to give it a little bit better vision, since that we had made progress in the design to more reflect what the design was actually
Yeah,
coming to.
if you already know it's not gonna be used, that's fine.
But that was the intent of editing it.
I was glad EFS went away too, so thank you.
You and staff were both happy for that.
If this is redundant, apologies, but what do you plan your back wall to be? You said you're gonna kind of downgrade the materials a little bit.
I was thinking some type of cement board and batten kind of a feel just on two walls on the outside of the kitchen.
Yeah, I think in this area, the PUD would permit a certain type of material, like the Bender Court area, this back of house area here. I think that's pretty.
That was, our thought was, would be here, and then we were thinking about coming around the corner a bit.
Yeah.
But not, everything else would be a mixture of stone and brick.
Other commissioner comments for commissioner's team or staff?
Is it anticipated your monument signage will be relatively close to the main drive you have shown to the north of the property?
Yes, and I appreciate Russell's, I'll get in trouble, he'll have to give me business later, but he's got, I think he's got a 10-foot sign. We will not want a sign that tall, we'll want something very low profile. I would imagine if it's 6 feet tall, I'd be surprised. We want it to be wider than tall, similar materials as to the building. And well landscaped as well.
Where it's difficult for me is, and I've brought this up before, of making sure you guys had a unique enough design concept for something that sticks out, or is memorable, I should say, comparatively to what's around, most notably to the south with Noah. You want something unique. So where there's a little bit of disconnect is in the character exhibits, it being more kind of a, I don't know, light industrial a little bit of wood, a little bit of steel, some brick element there. So if this new concept is what is intended, which simply I kind of call it a Greek inspiration, then that translation would just have to be in the character exhibit going forward. Is it something that necessarily fits the area? I don't know about that. But again, that's where just me personally, I'm going back and forth of making sure, again, you guys have something that is unique to your design and sticks out on where you're trying to accomplish, versus something that might just blend in with the area.
So my thoughts on that, I like this design fine for what it is, but I cautioned again, Victor, we start getting past planning and land use into architecture and design, and I don't know that we need to go that far personally.
Yeah, no, it's just between the character exhibits and this, updating it there.
And that's why it's before you tonight, because of that very concern that your staff's ably pointed out. And that's why we're here to talk about it. I mean, I think the thing we talk about, as far as how it fits contextually, I think one of the things that, the pretty significant setback from Spring Mill Road, anticipated that you will at some point have, additional structures between Spring Mill Road and this view. You also have mounding, to kind of make it a little bit insulated. So I think those are contextually, those are the ways that we've tried to I don't know if compensate's the right word, but try to deal with that concern, understanding it would, and here's my view. Regardless of what you put there, it's going to be different than what's north of it and south of it. There's not much that goes between what's south and what's north. That is not one of those two things. And I think that's always gonna be the challenge at an infill. It's 10 acres, but it is an infill site. And so I think that's part of the challenge, and that's how we've tried to overcome it.
So I agree with your comment there, and what Andre has indicated, we're here for land use, we're not here for every detail of architecture, we're not that kind of a review board, but all of it needs to be compliant with our UDO. And to your point, it's like Urban Apples has their look, Sundown Gardens, not sure what their look is. You certainly don't want their look. So, yeah, you're establishing something. The other side of Spring Mill still has a lot of open acreage and more residential. So there's a lot yet to come in that area. There are things approved to the north that who knows when they will show up. There's another agritourism piece for the corner that I couldn't even begin to tell you now how long ago it was and exactly what's in it. But I do remember there was something kind of cool that we had presented to us a lot of years ago that just has never materialized yet. So I don't think we need to, from my perspective, labor over this as long as it's UDO compliant and good quality.
Heeding both of your warnings, just a quick question though, it is the intent that the look would be symmetrical with whatever you do on the retail side of things, right? So it's not gonna be a brown building on the front of your property and this gorgeous stone building, I believe. Stone ivory building, that's the intent, correct? And then one thing, my only request in terms of land use, and again, trying to stick away from the architectural side is, I wasn't part of a body that approved the surrounding uses, but being cognizant of the continuing growing residential presence directly behind you and understanding, right, it can't be, it still sounds like it's high-end materials, but it can't be metal paneling, for instance, on the back of your building, right? So
There's
just being
enough-
cognizant of that residential presence behind you as well.
There's enough metal in the area now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So-
Agreed.
Even that's, yeah, both buildings next door are metal building.
Correct.
Well, I was talking about Sundown, but yes,
Yeah.
that too, so.
Not that it's relevant, but I think that looks great, I think it's definitely new business, but I really appreciate the way you guys are adhering to everything that's been requested, thank you.
I assume this will be on the agenda for when it's up for approval. Could we get a copy of these updated renderings emailed to the APC email or something, please, just so we can stare at them?
They're in the link for the.
They were, I didn't see them today, did I miss it?
If you're, yeah, I saw those.
Yeah, I did too. No, well, I'm staring at the retail, that looks great, and now I'm staring at a retail that doesn't necessarily look the same. So again, architectural standards aside, my OCD would despise driving by that on way
Yeah,
over.
and we'll probably need to work with the architect on updating the inspiration images for the retail, given that we're kind of making this shift, cause I think we wanna make it complementary and not look like it was developed 2 different times by 2 different people with 2 different tastes.
Regarding what is now a single supportive use lot that will then have a larger building, you indicated you preferred not to preclude multi-tenant building. Could you limit the multiple tenants to 2, which probably would have been the number of users in this original concept of 2 smaller lots with individual buildings on them? Can we look at one larger building that would be partitioned into no more
Can I
than
ask
2
why is
users?
that necessary?
Yeah, I would kinda go that way.
Cause my thing is.
I'm fine if it's only 1, I'm just saying 2.
No, I'm saying whether it's 1 or they want to put 3 or 5, I mean, honestly, like, it's their land with their commercial use, and if it's complementary businesses, I'm just wondering why it has to be limited to 1 or 2 or whatnot.
That's fair, I kinda lean the same way on that, but I would actually, Bob, I'm sure you're well thought out on that, so
Yeah, I wanna know, like, what's your thoughts behind that?
Question,
We just started down the path of a single lot instead of multiples, but maybe I was taking a leap that I shouldn't have taken, but my expectation was that each of those 2 smaller lots that are depicted on this site plan would have had a single user.
question for petitioner, what are you assuming, again, this is a swag and we won't hold you to, but initial square footage of the footprint for an acre and a half with parking and everything?
It's a great question, and there are probably, Google could tell me what that will support. But
I mean, if it's a 10,000 square foot building, I agree. If it's a
But at some point, there
20,000
becomes
square foot
parking
building.
limitations at that point.
Yeah, I agree, and so that's just kind of the question, I guess, is I'm all for restricting how many tenants, but I think it's based off of how much square footage you have there, right? You could comfortably fit 4 people if you have 20,000 square feet.
I think
Or if you
Mr.
only
I
have
think
10,
Mr.
you fit
Burke's
2.
question is a fair question. Envision 2 lots, probably single tenant, why wouldn't one building be able to support 2? I would only counter that to say that because I won't have the repetition of some of the parking that might be eliminated on each of those individual sites, would you feel comfortable with, this is a workshop, so we throw things on the wall and see if they stick. How about a maximum of 3?
Sure.
Yeah, and cause I'm just wondering, sometimes it's just dependent on the market, you know, what businesses are able to be in that space, want to be at that particular location at that time with that amount of square footage, it just limits options for them on your side, quite frankly, it limits options for you guys. If we say you can only do 2 or 3, then it has to be, it makes it that much more challenging. I can just speak for that as a developer
You're
who's
limited
done
so
some of
much
those
and it
things.
never gets developed, and then we're back here complaining it never gets developed.
Right, and then we sat on it forever and
Well,
there you
and,
go.
an interesting piece to add to this is how enforceable is that for you guys from a staff? Like, oh, they have 4 people in there right now, and then what a root
They got another
canal is
wall,
that, right? Like, for you to have to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we would catch at probably a couple of places, either with a remodel permit of the building, right, assuming it's a multi-tenant building, I guess it would be, we're talking about one building. And or sign permit phase, right, I mean, those are kind of our checkpoints for that, kind of thing, and if we know that there's a maximum limitation of users in a building, we should be looking for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say my solution, whether the maximum number of tenants or minimum number of square footage for a tenant, I think those maybe accomplish the same goal. You know, if you, and again, not knowing what the overall capacity could be, but we could probably reverse engineer a number that's an either or if he's okay with 3, then the max, then 3's the max.
I'm of the position, as we've heard of others, that I don't know why we would need to impose it. I know, thankfully, after June of this year, we'll finally be done planning and paying for weddings. There are a lot of different businesses involved, as you well know. I mean, you could have a photographer based there, and they don't take a whole lot of space anymore. And so if we imposed a minimum, that would boot them out of the possibility, and that's certainly a supporting business. In, you know, florist and hair and makeup and dress and on the list that I've tried to stay out of, but, I just don't know why we have to limit it.
Yeah, to Billy's point, I think aesthetically, as long as, you know, things look like they make sense over there, I think it gives them the best shot by not limiting it to seeing what could go there that would support their business.
On that same token, though, I also see we don't want 6 different signs on a building that you're driving by and they're all compressed like this, showing you where the tenant is. And so I think as we're being intentional about the thought process of this, of, you know, and again, I don't wanna get too far in the weeds outside of just the land use and improving what we're doing, but I also see the merit, to your point, is, you know, just, there's gotta be a magic formula, so to speak, of how it fits, how it flows, and again, it all comes down in my mind to the actual footprint of the shell.
So sign quantity was amongst the things that were rolling around in the back of my mind too. It's like, how big of a building is this gonna be?
You got 7 different
It's gonna
brand
be-
colors on a
Is it gonna be
beautiful stone
required
building.
that they're on the building, those signs, or can it be?
Well, I mean, you do this for a living, are you gonna build a beautiful space and not put a sign above your door?
I don't do that specifically.
I mean, like, in terms of like, the school side of it though, right, I mean, same thing on my, like, the
Sure.
athletic facility side of the world, we're not gonna build something and not put our branding just on a monument side by the road.
Right,
That's
right,
something that would
right,
probably be
yeah.
permitted. If I could just interject real quick from my fellow counselor's perspective, I know something that they're hesitant on is, one, I think most of them would appreciate going from 2 lots to 1 lot, but with that, it is having a multi-tenant building that would be similar to something like it's the southwest corner of 161st and Spring Mill, or on 32, you know, just multiple iterations of multi-tenant buildings that I believe that's something that they're trying to avoid in this space. So I don't know if there'd be a way to just cohesively build one building where it doesn't have that kind of strip mall look of you're just able to enter and then there's different sections that you can go into for said whatever tenants they are. But I know just from a council perspective, that's what they're trying to avoid.
Well, if it's a wedding venue type of thing with supporting businesses, it would seem to me like you could very easily have one entry door, and then here's a florist, here's a stationery, here's this, and they don't have to have their own definitive cubicle. It just kind of flows, and I've seen that places too, so it would visually, from the external standpoint, be just a building with one entrance,
like a
but
shared- like a
internally,
shared
you
entrance.
can, you can move up and
Yeah,
down
yeah,
pretty easily.
A co-hatch kind
Individual
of.
entrances from the parking lot.
Mhm.
It could have a solid appearance from the street and then have the individual entrances at the parking lot, right? If there's no.
Yeah, that'd be similar to like an ironworks where all the
Yeah.
signage is in the back.
I think too, just a few other things to keep in mind to maybe offer some solutions to accomplishing that concern is, you know, just by putting the building closer to the right of way, you can make it feel more like you know, an intentional location for a building. And with the parking in the rear, you ultimately get two facades that way that will likely be pedestrian oriented. So that alone can sometimes eliminate that commercial outlot feel, maybe not eliminate it, but soften it.
Right, where
a
they
little more.
put,
So there's certain things there that you can do. Also, in other PUDs and other areas of the UDO, we have a minimum building size too to prevent small buildings. I don't know if that's something that we wanna talk about as well, but these are just solutions and, you know, suggestions to accommodate what's being discussed.
I think I've seen exactly what you're talking about. They run a sidewalk on the bottom. It's like a facade that looks, so the back of that building would actually look like the front with signage. You just wouldn't be able to necessarily walk like as an entry door on that side. Some people just put it as windows, but it looks from the road as a front facing
So
thing.
it doesn't
you
look like a
accomplish
back
that.
of a building, right, yeah.
Dr. Keene arrived at something I was still processing in my mind, so thank you for that. I was actually up to the point where I was thinking of like the design center, which of course is different business, but for, you know, home goods, you have all the different things off a shared entrance. And for this, you know, it'd be the wedding mall, no offense, sorry, this is father of the bride's perspective, I didn't mean to cheapen the whole business, but the same thing, if that is the concern as to how the building presents outwardly, limit the entrances and the signage and things like that, I wouldn't go after it from how many businesses can go in there.
Yeah.
I can be on board with some of these other limitations we're discussing.
Yeah, and I'd still like to understand where does it, you know, where's our jurisdiction in terms of the look and design versus, as you were alluding to, Andre, the rules.
So if I could add, if they bring something forward and you don't like it because of how it looks, then you say no, right? If you like how it looks, or you know, you can say, hey, you know what, I'd rather you do it different. And if they do it different, right, then you say yes, right? I mean, that's literally your role on this, in my opinion. Now, whether or not, like, to me, the building looks great, right? Not that you care or anybody cares, right? But I love how it looks. I don't want the front building to look like the back building, right? I want it to be unique and different, but I do want it to look like whatever is in the character exhibit is exactly what Victor was saying,
Well, how do I
right?
balance it between that and what the other comments were, that we don't go into designing their building and, you know, all the aesthetics and all that,
Yeah.
right? That's what I'm asking. Like,
It's more
what is that?
about not the design itself, but the materials being used. So,
Okay.
you know, we have two different directions, what's in front of us that we can go, where in the character exhibits, it's one style, whereas what they're showing us here is a different style. And to just
Yeah,
real
well,
quick-
maybe one of those guys, or Victor can explain to you, or Bob or Andre, because they're materials people on this. The UDO is gonna is already gonna tell them what they have to do for the most part, if they don't describe it specifically in the PUD, right?
Currently, the area fronting Spring Mill Road the PUD has written it into where it would default to the architectural standards of the 32 overlay.
Yeah.
Which is 60% masonry, no EVAs, or limited use of EVAs, I should say.
So imagine
So-
like, the,
Building
where the
modulation.
AT&T building is, right, like where, or the Tyson or the, whatever those places are.
Tropical smoothie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a UT, or, State Road over 32 overlay architectural standard, or is that a completely different?
maybe in a PUD, I'm not for sure, I can't say off the top of my head,
I
but
would probably equate it more to like Slim Chickens or something that used more maybe red brick or other similar facade that didn't really, that was on a consent agenda, basically.
The Starbucks
The Turnwood
one.
Trail.
Yeah, the CBD.
Oh, no worries, I appreciate it, I don't wanna use this time to train me.
No,
As you can
that's
tell, I'm new to the planning commission,
man.
but
Yeah.
I appreciate it though, thank you guys.
Well, and again, to that point though, I'm trying to put my counselor hat on and try to foresee what they might say. Similar to that point of, yes, the renderings that you're showing tonight just looks great, you know. Anyone that would get married there, I'm sure would be happy with it. And it's certainly something unique for the community, but that type of design style would probably not be something as accepted on the front end with the accessory building there. So again, I'm trying to go back and forth of, I'm not trying to design, I'm just looking at the materials of what was in the exhibit, and you know, that's what all others have seen so far, and they've been like, okay. But adding now something new to the equation here, it's, all right, what direction to go? So that's just collectively what I would want to learn from this body tonight is, are you guys more inclined with the previous exhibits that were presented or what they're presenting tonight, just to try to get us on the straight and narrow here?
I need help with one item. So if you combine the two outlots into one building, push it more street frontage, what's that do to the parking?
Parking will all be internal, then there will be no parking on the spring mills, between the building facade and spring mill.
So it's net neutral parking. So I assume, I'm gonna overestimate, I work with numbers, 350 people, divide that by 2 plus employees. I'm trying to just picture, so I'm an active user of Grand Park. Where do you put overflow?
I'm sorry.
Where do you put overflow parking?
Well, we've got a rule of thumb for weddings is 2.5 people per, those are industry standards,
Yeah.
2.5 people per. So, and 350 people, math is hard, never do it in public, but I'm curious.
80, 80?
180,
What?
what's that, 350 divided by?
It's 175, guys. 175 plus employees.
This is awesome.
Plus,
Yeah, so what do we-
I'm giving you the benefit, that's
No, no,
divided
you're
by
fine.
2.
And we've updated.
140.
And we've got an updated, and we'll file, we've made some changes to the site plan, subtle changes.
Okay.
We've added parking here in the back, and we've added some parking, parallel parking here for employees. The vendor court is simply back of house access, and parking will be back there, so that won't impact the front. So I think all told, we'll have about 185 to 190 parking spots all told.
Okay.
So-
Including the outlot spaces.
Including one row of the outlot spaces, so the version I saw is here. We're driving, to one of the comments at Plan Commission, we're driving all internal, all access here, so there's no access off of here, so that's the current version of the concept plan, the site plan.
Just to give everybody a little visual, I was pulling up stuff here so I could actually read numbers, because I'm not quite able to discern dimensions from what's on the screen, believe it or not. We're essentially talking about something that's a little wider, but the same length as a football field here. So the building is gonna go on something that's about 300 feet minus whatever the setbacks are. And that's what you can start to squeeze in. The depth of these lots is 225 feet.
I just did the math, now that I have a calculator in front of me, 140, so 350 people would require on industry average about 140 spaces. And obviously then we could add 20 people for staff, because our catering team, our staff is never more than 3 or 4 people.
I appreciate it. I'm sure there was a science that went to it, I just,
Well, and I twitch when people.
well, as you can imagine, in that area, there's no like, where else are you gonna park, right? It's busy, it's not designed for it, and, I mean, personally, the last thing I wanna see is a bunch of cars parked in the outlots.
I can guarantee, well, the kids will tell you that, you don't park in my grass. It's just, it just doesn't happen.
No, but it's something to consider. I mean, we have in the past had big events at the existing facility. So we went with more parking in this facility than our existing, because in the handful of times that it's happened where we have overflow parking, it's not great for the guests, it's not a good look, honestly, so
Yeah.
parking is really important to us. Is it important for us to have an overflow plan, or is this acceptable as it stands?
What was the number of parking spots again? I'm sorry.
140.
I'd have to look at.
That's,
Something like 190
the total.
total.
180 to 190.
190, okay. So,
I was more concerned, hey, does it net out, so are we just pushing them? I just wanna make sure I didn't miss. But think of the aesthetics of it, right? This is a very busy area. You've got a lot of traffic coming back and forth. The last thing you want is that to become an eyesore for any of us, for anybody in the room, right? That is the last thing I want there to be a miss on.
My intention is that there would be no parking in any of the outlots. At all, and we've expanded that parking, and the good folks at Delello are gonna appreciate that. So, keep it in the family in Westfield, right?
Are there any other concerns amongst Plan Commission for petitioner or staff?
A couple of comments on your design, not related at all, because I don't wanna go back on what I just said. This isn't because of contemplating whether this should be recommended or not, but it's just for the success of your facility. I noticed you had a nice vestibule on the front, but I think there were none going out to your patio. And there are probably code exceptions that allow you to not have those, but you probably want to have those
Doors or vestibules?
vestibules. That door opening once in the wrong weather, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with those tables. So just because code doesn't make you do it as a secondary door or something, doesn't mean you might not want to have the vestibule there anyway. And then, something that we've worked hard on here is the screening of mechanicals, and I know you've got the design for it, you've got some parapets and everything, but so often the mechanical still peeks through. And it's a difficult thing to enforce, especially at that stage. Your building's going to be in a lot more pictures than a typical building. So you may wanna just double check the parapets versus mechanical, so somebody's wedding picture doesn't have a nice rooftop unit sticking up above the stone facade that you've put up there.
You can educate me after we're done with the concept of parapet,
Sure.
so. But yeah, we are thinking rooftop.
Okay.
In the character exhibit, just reevaluating there, I think number 6 on exhibit E, I think that kind of summarizes what we were discussing of wanting a building along Spring Mill that has multi-tenants, but it might not look, yeah,
So you like that?
yeah, I would say I would like that out of anything that is up on the screen currently. Maybe in terms of architecture, number 1, with the materials you're using. But number 6, because I said co-hatch, and that is a collaborative. So that'd be kind of what you guys would be going for in terms of the multi-tenants.
Victor, I think we're fine to commit to leaving our supportive commercial character exhibits in place. I'm fine for us to be held to that standard of construction.
Okay.
I think the only exhibits that we were talking about swapping were going to be
Back to the
for
main
the
building.
primary building. But I'm fine to be held to that standard of construction. As you can imagine, we'll invest well over $6 million in this entire project.
Yeah.
And I have no interest in a tropical smoothie. So.
I don't know how she might feel about that.
This building, I mean,
You know, right down the road.
Yeah.
So,
Because, just, you know, we're a workshop, so we can just share things. You know, number 6, it kinda looks like it might work a little better with the what's already built in the surrounding area. And then as you're going to the back, cause I know you're wanting to create a unique experience, you're trying to blend the styles a little bit. And so if you have a front building that kind of blends the styles of what's already around, you know, with Noah to the south and so on and so forth, has that more barn industrial look a little bit, and then you go to the back and it's just like, whoa. I think that would be, that would work for the overall feel.
So with that, do we need to remove any of these? this larger discussion of cohesiveness between the two buildings.
Well, I mean, if we're talking cohesiveness, I don't think 2, 3, 4, 5 really fit with what they're trying to accomplish in the back anymore. Because with the back again being more Greek, marble, etc. in style,
I think 2 could be if we change the color of the brick.
I think the brick color is very good.
Timeless to color, cause I agree, I think if you painted some of these white, that it would look, just from the casual observer.
for instance, number 1 or number 2.
I think 4 and 5, I can see how those.
Oh, eliminating 4 and 5? Yeah, I think 4 and 5 probably are.
And the State Road 32 overlay architectural standards would still apply as well to the commercial area, so for example, like Birdie's, that's a building that incorporates those standards, so high quality materials, you know, some modulation, some roof line variation, that sort of thing, so that would still apply even with these images, so.
I'd say generally I'm colorblind and I wear the same clothes every day because I can't match anything. So you're cool with all those to me. I think they look.
You look pretty good right now.
I love
so,
that
yeah.
gray building, it's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. The pink one's weird.
Why is everything in town gray? I don't understand. What are they doing?
That's funny.
Well, I think I wanna take Victor's, concern to heart. Why don't we'll eliminate 4 and 5? I think those are.
And to further his point, I love 6, but then to Wes's point, understanding the 32 overlay and having some intentionality with kind of how your parapet, ceiling wall, whatever you wanna call it, right, flows and how it
Stop
does it.
using that word.
So I call it the ceiling wall, the thing that goes above your actual roof itself.
Okay, now I'm getting, now.
Having that
Castles.
intentionality of how
Yeah.
it flows will be key, but yeah. Well, again, the flow from the front building to the main building, having some level of design intent where you're using similar materials that you can pick up on what was similarly used, but the main building being again distinct enough to where it stands out.
Yeah, and just a few comments that I just want to get out there as we've been talking through things. I just want to make sure that we captured in the site plan. I know an updated site plan is coming, but if we can incorporate some pedestrian connectivity into that plan as well, to show the multi-use trail fronting Spring Mill Road, connecting into what is shown on the north and south. That'd be an ideal addition there, and then also just a pedestrian pathway that connects to the right-of-way back to the property. That'll be a requirement of the UDO regardless, but if we could plan for that to make sure it's meaningful, that'd be something that we would appreciate.
Real quick, that was something we as counselors received a email regarding a project that's before us
Oh,
currently.
really?
and
Okay.
It wasn't detailed in the plan, and so someone saw that and was like, hey, is there gonna be a trailer? Well, I said exactly what you just said, they would be required anyway, but it just wasn't pictured there.
And we're talking about the trail across or the 8-foot path
Yeah.
across the
And then
front.
you need connectivity from
Oh,
there
sure.
back.
Oh, connectivity from there back.
Yes, correct.
And how do we accomplish that?
Work with architects.
Okay. Is that why Noah has a sidewalk along his drive?
Most likely, that's why it's there.
Have we shot our wad? Have we roughed these people up enough?
Yeah.
Is there a list of some sort that Kevin has accumulated to
bet that's,
review somehow or other concisely?
A lot of discussion. Let me see if I can capture, I'm just gonna try to summarize the outstanding items that need attention in the next revision. So if I didn't capture something, let me know. Alright, in order of discussion here. 1, removing the double row of parking in the outlot. That provision. 2, including the new building elevations into the character image. So originally we talked about for both the main building and the retail building, I think we kind of went away from that, so it's really just for the main building.
And 5 and 6.
I'll update my note on that. 3, remove images 4 and 5 from Exhibit D. And then for incorporate pedestrian pathways on updated concept plan, specifically along Spring Mill Road and the internal connection path from Spring Mill back to the site.
Yeah, and there was
A lot of other discussion, but I don't know that there was any like to-dos.
extending the landscaping along the southern
Okay,
boundary.
yeah, thank you.
And then also, conjoining the lots 2 and 3 into one.
One lot, so
Gosh, sorry, yes, that was a given.
Would it be problematic or cumbersome to update some of that parking schematic when you put it on that trail, just so I could see it?
yeah, we'll work on that. That's why you don't have one, cause
Yeah,
we
no,
didn't have a revision that was ready for prime time tonight.
It's just a hot topic in that area.
Well, and similar to that, now that we are combining the 2 lots, maybe some, just not really extensive detail, but just some outline of where said building would go.
Yeah, and
Well,
then
couldn't it just be a maximum building size according to the lot size?
we would likely do a minimum building size in this scenario in lieu of a maximum building size, so. Just, that was a suggestion. If you're going to do a minimum building size, that could help alleviate some of the concerns of it being a more, smaller outlot.
Out of curiosity, there's no scenario where you could do 2 buildings on the single outlot, was there? With our UDO?
I don't believe,
I mean,
for
there's no-
commercial,
There's no restriction on that for commercial.
yeah.
You can only have a single house on a lot, but commercial, there's no
You
restriction.
could, so that even if we've just made this one building, they could put, if we set a minimum standard and it's 2,000 feet, if they wanted to, they could put 5 of them on there, right? If we allow.
Well, there's a variety of things that would impact that, like parking requirements, setback requirements, minimum building
We
separation.
can just do one primary
so-
structure and that avoids.
Yeah, there's,
You code yourself out.
yeah,
Theoretically.
right.
Yeah. You've heard enough of our thoughts and comments, I'm sure you will come back for the
Yep.
next meeting, whichever
And
one
then-
that is, with something that we are all gonna love.
Yeah, and just to confirm, we pared down the uses, I just wanna make sure everyone had a chance to review that, there's no further comments on that. We eliminated what we viewed were, the more undesirable land uses in there and struck some things, so just wanted to get that out, this one last item.
It was more restricted than I expected, so if the petitioner's okay with that, I certainly wasn't gonna add.
You can take Victor.
I wasn't
Fellow
gonna chip
council,
away any
right?
further than
Okay.
Thank you all. Well, listen, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
See you at a future meeting.
It's gonna be a great thing for the community. Definitely needed, not enough venues out there, so hope you guys do well.
Thank you, we're excited.
Don't throw it away, recycle it. Okay.
Those in the same dumpster.
I bet she doesn't come back with a Pellegrino ever again.
I know, I'm gonna tell my fiance he can drink all the Pellegrino and I'll stick with my Soda Stream.
At least have it in a koozie.
It would be even more like alcohol if I had it in a koozie.
Exactly. Everybody to get one.
Why does it say Chatham Hills?
It's said that for a long time.
I think North Point's the same
Thought we
thing.
had pointed that out, that somebody was gonna get a ring.
Oh,
Take the
nice.
chair with you? You really don't have to rearrange the furniture.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't know it was that nice.
Thank you.
Self brownie points.
I wouldn't have stolen that one. Stolen that one.
There's better chairs in here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, what do I have
All right. We have one other workshop item, maybe we can dispense with in a little less time. That would be our UDO General Patch 24.01. Petition number is 2403-ZOA-01. And Lauren will enlighten us, and then we will ask her questions or grill her, as the case may be.
Yeah. So yes, so this is ordinance 24, sorry, is that 21? 2421. It was previously ordinance 2415, however, we split it in half and had the floodplain ordinance, the floodplain administrator be pushed through as a separate piece. That has worked. We are in discussions with hiring someone for that purpose, so that served its intended purpose.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because people email me about floodplain and I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to send them. So yes, so very minor changes. I kind of imagine this as sort of a question and answer kind of period. No one wants me to sit here and talk for an hour about zoning, cause I really could. So if anyone had any questions, anyone wants any clarification, or just wants to, discuss, you have the floor. If nobody wants to talk, then I guess I could talk for an hour about zoning, but.
It's a good stride towards giving Dr. Keen more of his Tuesdays back, since pools will be far less common at BZA meetings.
Yeah, I guess I could touch on that part. So
It is
as,
kind of a big, exciting one.
that is definitely an exciting one, so,
But I will have to have some other way of referring to the Board of Pool Appeals now, and go back to the actual name of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
yeah, so our Board of Pool Appeals, as they're called, essentially a very large part of what the BZA reviews, is swimming pool setbacks and encroachment into swimming pool encroachments into setbacks. Essentially, Westfield, we're blessed with growth and people wanna build large, expensive houses on little lots that have 20 and 30-foot setbacks in their backyards. However, they can't put a pool, in that setback. So a lot of times people will ask for a variance. So one change in this is, it permits a property owner to get permission from their affected neighbor. Essentially, if their neighbor signs off and signs a form, they get it recorded, that they can reduce their setback by a maximum of 50%. We already permit this with stables, it's worked pretty well. Of course, there are a lot more pools than there are horse stables. But from my kind of quick Excel sheet, I do think this could cut down about 80% of our variances.
So you're not completely out of business.
If everyone, so, yeah, theoretically, if everyone's neighbor said, sure thing, that's fine, about 80% of the variances we did for pools in the past 3 years fell within that 50%. It was at or less than 50% of what the original setback was, so 40 feet to 20 feet, 30 to 15. Of course, the pool can't go into any kind of easement, utility or otherwise. So that could be another factor, but yeah, this could cut down on a lot of variances.
Lauren, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So when a plan gets approved now, so this is, this actually is patching the UDO, not the UDO, this is the.
This is the UDO.
Okay, yeah, the UDO. So for a design of a new neighborhood, like starting tomorrow, if we approve this sometime, right, or whatever. Like that neighborhood will now be designed with a different setback, or like we're not changing setbacks?
We're not changing any setbacks, so right now, for example, a swimming pool variance that I did recently, it was a 30-foot setback that the guy wanted to encroach 10 feet into that. So theoretically, if we had this on the books at that time, that person could have gone to the neighbor that he is encroaching kind of towards, so at this point it would be his neighbor that touches the back of his lot. And he could have said, hey, is it cool, will you sign this form that I can encroach, up to 15%, up to 15 feet into that 30-foot setback? And the neighbor said, yeah, that's fine. It could have avoided this variance.
So I'm curious, what sets that, the setback, like why do we have
Why do we have the
that
setback?
setback at that rate, at that amount of space?
Yeah, so the setback applies to, well,
Like, where'd we come up with the math for that number? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, so essentially a setback applies to the building. So this is kind of a flaw of Westfield only having one building setback and not having a separate setback for accessory structures. So pools, a long time ago, I guess when we wrote the UDO, this could have been something that goes back to 1977. It was decided that a pool should follow the same setback as the building. However, as lots got smaller and houses got bigger and, buildings became more desirable, it kind of shrunk down the space that you could put that pool in. So in the last maybe 5 years, it's become much bigger issue than it was previously.
As one of Dr. Keene's fellow BZA members, is there, you know, thinking through this, I mean, we're also the committee of covered patios sometimes. And so is this under that same vein, or is that something that also needs to be treated separately? I mean, we're obviously singling out swimming pools here, but is the intent to essentially evolve into, as you had mentioned, accessories, so to speak?
Yeah, so a first draft of this actually had both swimming pools and pergolas, because smart pergolas especially have been kind of an emerging variance requirement. We kind of struck that pending further research. So essentially, accessory structures are difficult because we have two classes of accessory structures. We have those over 300 square feet, and which require heavier setbacks, and those under which don't. Because there are two classes, and it was kind of more complicated to decide where that cutoff was.
Makes sense.
We're pending some more thinking on that.
Makes sense.
Cause we don't want somebody to build a giant shed a foot away from, or 10 feet away from
Right.
somebody else's yard.
So it took it from, like you said, 40 feet to 20 feet, like halving it?
Yeah, so it's 50% of the maximum setback,
Okay.
So if they
or
wanted
the
to do,
minimum, sorry.
if they wanted to do 60, they still have to come before our body,
Oh,
essentially.
yeah, if they wanna do 60, they're probably in their neighbor's yard already.
Right.
Sorry.
The neighbor's not gonna sign it.
Shared maintenance
That's a
agreement,
problem.
right? Share the pool, I guess.
So when you're gonna build your, so when you're building your pool, you're just gonna have to make sure that Brian Chapman gets a pool party every year to, agreement.
Right.
The one I had to hear about in this change that fixes the single lot that's under the 1 acre world that grandfathers in.
This is, yeah, there's a different modification that addresses the,
Yes, the
yeah.
the
I think that's a
Bohemia-
really, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I just think that's a big one. Could you guys go over that one? Because that's one that, like, I find really interesting.
Yeah, so this is one that I think Dr. Keene commented on last time. And I realized I didn't explain it very well. Where are we looking here? So I tried to get, at least in my memo, a little bit clearer on what this actually meant. Non-conforming regulations. So 9.4C. Let me actually bring up. Here we go. So this is affecting what we call legal non-conforming lots of record. So essentially a lot of record is a lot that existed, it was subdivided illegally or illegally before 1977. So 1977 is kind of like the magic year. That's when Westfield absorbed all of Washington Township and introduced zoning to Washington Township. But as a result, you have some subdivisions. North Bokeelia is one, Far Hills. I have a list of them on my laptop, but there's a good amount, more than I thought, maybe 7 to 10 subdivisions that were established in the county back before it was under Westfield jurisdiction and back before there was any zoning. So essentially, because there wasn't like an R2 and R3, a set zoning district that you could point to and say, here are the setbacks, here are the lot requirements. They just wrote those on the plat and they didn't rezone it from AGSF1 or an agricultural zone. So as a result, when Westfield absorbed that and it got added to the zoning map, those are all still zoned agricultural, even today. However, our UDO says that if a lot is under 3 acres, or 100 feet, you technically can't use it or build on it, or basically it's kind of legal non-conforming. So if you wanna do those things, you have to get a variance for all of the ways the lot is not
We
conforming.
just saw this at the BZA, I think like 2 months ago for a garage structure, I believe,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's.
Yeah, but for a lot of these, it's like they would need lot size, lot frontage, side setback, rear setback, front setback. So a lot of them, it's just, we tell them that they need 10 variances and they say, you know what, I really don't need a garage addition. Thanks. So yeah, what this does is it basically just brings those more into line.
So there was some conversation around this about those like if they tried to sell,
Yeah,
they couldn't get title insurance or because they're actually a non-conforming lot.
that is another thing, and honestly, I'm amazed that has not become a bigger issue before now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as a non-conforming lot, if you were to really read into this and take this very seriously, you technically could not legally live in that house that you're trying to sell, which could affect your mortgage, your title insurance, all sorts of things down the line. I think in Westfield, this is old enough that kind of our local people know that this is a thing and kind of look past it, but that could be a factor.
Why can't they change it?
Go ahead.
Why can't they change the,
I'm sorry, maybe.
oh, sorry.
Like, look past it, it still exists and it's not?
Yeah, so like, say the title agent is going through kind of the due diligence, and they get to the one that says like, oh, this isn't a legal use for the lot, they kind of just say, you know, this is one of 10 neighborhoods where this is a problem, and
Yeah.
they don't push it.
Okay.
They still allow that person to get title insurance or a mortgage or whatever.
And if
Okay,
that
I've
wasn't-
spoken a lot about
So if it
legal
wasn't
opportunities.
happening, we'd have had a town that was in an uproar long ago, and it
Right.
somehow or other would have been solved, but we don't need to rock the boat because the boat's on an
Well,
even
this
keel,
resolves
just the way it
that,
is.
right?
What'd you say?
This resolves that largely.
Yeah, this does resolve that, and yeah, we don't really have to wait for somebody to say, hey, I can't get a mortgage, or I can't sell.
Yeah.
But yeah, this would resolve that, and this actually kind of stems from a gentleman who tried to build a garage, and then he couldn't build a garage, and he just kind of built a garage anyway. It's a very nice garage, but we kind of realized that, hey, maybe we should fix this and not, you know, wring our hands over illegal garages.
So the new size, .4
Yeah.
acres, that resolves it for all the neighborhoods that you found?
Yeah, so I looked through all of the lots and all the neighborhoods that I could find. There's very possible I've overlooked one or two, but the smallest I could find was 0.4 acres. Most of them are 0.75, 0.66 acres. And then the narrowest one I could find, not including flag lots, there are a couple flag lots that have 10 feet frontage, was 75 feet.
So the one-offs that may have been missed, I mean, they could come in for a variance, we'd support it. Can come back and modify this again, just to, I mean, there's
Yeah.
multiple ways we can,
Yeah,
if there are any, I'm not sure there
Yeah.
are any,
if
but
there is a lot that falls under this, we could fix that pretty easily.
Like, what kind of frequency should this happen? A UDO patch, like, and when was the last one?
Couple times, when was the last
no magic answer. I mean, probably when we,
floodplain ordinance?
probably when we created the workshop process, so
Oh, yeah.
a couple years ago. I mean, there's no silver bullet answer to that. I would say probably one or two a year. I mean, it just depends on how much we're able to get into a single patch ordinance, right? But, and if we're able to clean up all the things that have kind of been bothering us for a while, then maybe we won't have very many. I mean, it's just, we've got a pretty healthy list of things over the years. We just haven't had either the time or just capacity, whatever, to address them. So we're gonna systematically work through them. Yeah, it's pretty time consuming coming up with well, some of them involve quite a bit of research to make sure that we're proposing a good standard, or something that's workable or feasible or legal.
Doesn't violate something else.
Doesn't cause another problem. So we do a lot of kind of checking, kind of internal testing these to make sure that we're not hopefully causing other problems by fixing one. So they just take time, but yeah, my hope is that we'll do a handful of these a year until we kind of get through our list. And maybe by that point, we'll have, coming
will be hopefully kind of through the comp plan that will then give us direction for the next set of updates and things to our UDO to better reflect what the comp plan talks about. So that's kind of my thought and vision of how we'll kind of keep working at this. It's a never-ending task.
Yeah.
The list of things that this is now whittled down substantially doesn't have any, well, I mean, it's whittled it down some, I was trying to be kind. It sounds from what you've said that we're unlikely to see another one of these in 2024.
I don't know.
I would very much,
Do you think there's enough inclination and available resources to be able to tackle another?
I would hope we'd be able to introduce another one here.
yeah, I see this as kind of like our miscellaneous patch, like these are kind of the easy ones to knock out. Kind of moving forward, I kind of foresee more generalized patches, like one specifically about signs, specifically about landscaping.
Yeah, more topical.
Yeah, more topical and,
That reminds me.
yeah.
Sorry.
You're,
I got
do you have a
so excited
landscaping
when you
comment?
said that. Yeah, so, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry.
I was done.
The, when someone does I heard that conversation about the landscape buffer and the trees that they're gonna use as the existing. Do we require, like, cause I've seen the Judd Scott things before where they go out and produce the document that says, like,
Like a tree inventory.
thank you. We require that as part of a process to validate it, or how does that work?
If they are wanting to preserve trees for credit, for landscaping credit, then yes.
Okay.
Technically, we require some sort of inventory.
Well,
That, I think
Yeah,
has
it
to
has
be.
to meet.
You have to have something to go back and say,
Yeah, it has
Yeah.
to be.
you said you were gonna
Caliber
save that, but there's only a
species.
stump now.
There's gotta be some sort of checks and balances at some point.
Yeah.
And the tree has to be of a certain quality and standard too.
Yeah.
It can't just be a,
ash, it's a dying ash,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
example.
4-inch caliper and healthy.
Yeah,
So, and like we were talking about, that project that we approved a couple weeks ago that had the patch of trees that over on the west side that they said they were gonna end up, thank you,
Yeah.
that they were gonna end up tearing through anyways, but to get any sort of credits on maybe like ones that are already located inside of an easement, say they were gonna use a park, whatever, is there an easement that has to get recorded on that area, or just when it becomes common area? How's that work? I was thinking about that.
Yeah, we have a tree preservation easement. The language is set in our UDO. It's pretty intense. It requires, signage, and there's a whole list of, more like a couple paragraphs of things, what you can and can't do in this tree preservation
for example, in
easement.
the Westwood PUD, the rear of the property, the PUD language required it to be in a tree preservation easement. So at time of plating, you would see that on.
Yeah,
That's where we would review that.
no
Yeah.
mowing, no spraying.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
I think the HOA is required to do periodic maintenance, stuff like that.
I get you. I remember looking at that at some point in time, but I couldn't think about it, and then we were talking about it earlier, it made me.
Can you give me a less than a 1 minute on the lighting standards, just to educate?
Did I cut any lighting standards? Oh,
6.
festoon lighting. This one's very exciting to me. Okay,
Market lighting.
market
Whatever.
1
lighting.
minute might be hard.
Okay, sorry. This was a
I
lot
jinxed
larger,
it.
and then this will be another one that will be one of our patches. So essentially, in terms of streetlights, there are a couple references to streetlights here. Essentially, we moved that from the chapter 6, which is the development standards, to chapter 8, which are the design standards. That's really more of a public works piece. In public works, design standards apply more to public works and their standards than planning and our standards. So that is why streetlights have been added to the exception, and then the reference to streetlights has also been removed from this. The thing about vapor lamps, that was removed because mercury vapor lamps were basically banned in 2003, and it was kind of showing its age by still being in the UDO. And then my most favorite one, where is my festoon lighting one? Oh, that's an outdoor dining, never mind. Okay, so essentially this one, which is not my favorite one, it adds multifamily and non-residential standards. So originally, there's a section of lighting standards that originally only applied to business and industrial. But then the question was, is this multifamily? What about institutional, like parks or schools? There was kind of a debate about whether or not those standards applied. So we changed the name to multifamily and non-residential, so there's no confusion. Regarding festoon lighting, there originally was a restriction on essentially those kind of string lights that you see at
Essentially.
yeah, you see at Starbucks and stuff like that. That was also removed right here. And I thought that was in the lighting standards, but it was not. And that is just a standard that we have not ever enforced. None of us knew it was there.
So now we can have festoon lights.
Now you can legally have festoon lights.
Let's string this city a little.
In your outdoor cafe and eating areas.
State Road 32.
I love this thing.
Could have just started enforcing it when you realized that it was a thing, as opposed to just taking it out. Who wants to really do that?
We wanna be festive.
Yeah,
In our downtown.
because this is Westfield.
I should know this by now, but I don't. At the BZA, if somebody's coming in like for a pool variance, the level of documentation, can that just be text, or do they have to do drawings and things, or what are they required?
We get napkin drawings that are quite well done.
I require professional site plan, so essentially a drawing showing the setbacks and if it comes to us from the building department, basically where they've submitted a pool permit and then it's been kicked back to zoning, we'll have like full professional documents, but we do require a sketch.
It seems like any neighbor who is gonna notarize a letter to authorize or to accept the 50% reduction, up to 50%, should be afforded that same amount of documentation.
Oh yeah, that will be a requirement.
Okay.
Or like a plot plan,
Yeah.
location, showing the location of it.
Not everybody, when you say, I'm gonna reduce 50% up to 50 of your setback, they're, oh, okay, whatever, and then it gets built, and like, oh, I didn't know that's what it
Slip it
meant.
as an exhibit essentially to what they're signing,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah.
Just change the scale on the picture.
Exactly.
Looks like it's miles.
Little,
away.
and tiny scribbles not to scale written in the bottom right corner, but.
Yeah, we will, I hadn't thought that far ahead, but that will be a requirement of that form.
Similar subject, is it an unreasonable expectation that when we're looking at some of these projects and we see it like a plot and they're like, oh, well, you know, the trail's not on there, or that's not an accurate depiction of some of the parking? Is it an expectation that we see that, more of an accurate depiction of that at some point, or is that for council?
That is a tough,
I mean, if it's not specifically called out, it would just revert to whatever the UDO standards are, right? And so,
Yeah, so
if it's in the PUD, it's up to us to look at it and ask the question of what does that do in contrast to the UDO, correct?
yeah, we always encourage clarity, and if a petitioner is willing to provide that in site plan, especially if it's a UDO standard that we know that they're going to have to follow, for example, like you need a trail, you need connectivity, you know? And the petitioner mentioned, you know, in situations where, oh, we have a site plan that shows that, you know, let's go ahead and do that. So
For us, it's something
generally-
that might be obvious, but those that might be watching, listening in, or just checking the agendas on their own, again, hence the email that we received. We know people are looking at stuff, and the more clarity we can
Yeah,
provide, the better.
generally speaking, the more clarity, but we always encourage that.
If they're doing it already, might as well go ahead and throw it in.
yeah,
I don't know if you had any
I usually,
site plan specificity.
I usually have that as a tag
Yeah.
comment, but sometimes it gets
In the PUD.
missed or
Yeah.
sometimes just with the course of how these plan revisions come about. It doesn't always fit nicely with when we have to upload documents. Sometimes we'll get a resubmittal, you know, a couple days after, and although we could probably update the agenda.
I just think about the efficiency and being able to go back and forth and say, oh, yes, it's in there, and rant over.
I guess to that point, the question is, if it's not shown, but it's also there's nothing contrary to it in the underlying PUD or planning, I mean, I think they're obligated to meet UDO standards, and so even if the plan's approved as shown, but the PUD doesn't explain any direct contrary nature, you revert to the initial intent of the UDO.
It'd be something that'd be shown on that primary plat
Right.
anyway.
I would say that if this was at our first APC meeting of the month where we're giving a recommendation on something, then let's not be holding them to it. It's more so if it's something that's being introduced at council and we mention it, hey, let's catch this now, or, or it's just being introduced or workshop, then yes, but if we get so far ahead, then it's just like, you don't need to go through that effort, extra work to delay the process.
Before we totally lose track of anything, let me just do a double check here for understanding. It sounds like we have completed the UDO patch discussion and we have maybe segued into reports and comments, and these are general plan commission
Well,
member comments.
I will quickly say thank you. I for one did not know mercury lighting was outlawed in 2003. So the fact that you went to school for this and do this day in and day out, I trust you all.
Oh, I Googled that, I did not learn that at
Thank
school.
you for, but still.
Now I gotta figure out where I'm gonna sell all my mercury.
Yeah, we gotta do that, black market, man.
Thank you all very much for the intentionality and the thought process behind this. It makes a lot of sense.
Lauren's awesome.
All right, there was one item continued to a future meeting, the Osborne Trails PUD Amendment 4, which we will hear at our next workshop meeting, as it stands now anyway. Taking us then to reports and comments, Plan Commission members, is there anything that we haven't already spoken about that still is on anybody's mind?
Yes, sorry, quickly. Just because I think this is, part of, would help me understand, and I think maybe some of the other new people, but like, we look at these parking lots, right? And that's 180 spots. Out of curiosity, it's not our jurisdiction. How many trips are going in that? What's the road impact fee on a project like that?
So it's calculated by by the number of 24-hour trips on a weekday?
An average week, yeah.
Yeah, on weekday 24-hour trips, and we get that from the ITE International Traffic Engineers Manual. They essentially have all of these graphs that show for different types of uses for different locations, at different sizes. Essentially, you kind of plug in the number, like the square footage of a building, for example.
Okay.
And they will kind of spit out with, on average, this is how many trips you'll have per 100 square feet or something. And then using that, we multiply it by a set fee. I think it's $427 per peak hour, per trip. And that minus any kind of credits for building a drive or doing some demo or pass-by trips. So say for a coffee shop or something, they assume a number of people are going on the way to going someplace else.
Oh.
It will then spit out a very big number, usually in like the hundreds of thousands.
So yeah, does anybody have a guess at what the road impact fee will be for this project?
They have submitted for Westwood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a detailed.
The petitioner has submitted a road impact fee estimate request. I can't recall what that number was, but typically, commercial uses will generate more trips.
Yeah.
So I can just tell you off the top of my head, if the lot were developed on Spring Mill, that would more than likely have more trips than the event center, because the event center is probably factored on having 2 or 3 events a week.
I get it.
You spread that out over 7 days, and you do the math there. Sometimes that traffic generation manual can be a little surprising. Certain uses, like even a park, can actually generate more traffic than you can imagine on a Saturday. A park can get pretty busy.
Yeah.
So the traffic generation manual can be a little surprising sometimes. Certain uses that you would perceive to not have a lot of traffic do, and other uses that you would perceive to have a lot actually may not.
As a sports complex developer that's open 7 days a week, road impact fees are not fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
they can be
a big
expensive.
number.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our public works department, I know for this use especially, the road impact fee or the ITE manual doesn't have a very clear grasp on this type of use. Is that right? That just like event center is not.
Some uses are more defined than others, just based on the data available and the research that's been completed by, the industry in general.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Sorry, no, you're good. I did have one general question just based on the discussions today. It's for my own clarification and education in this, and I'm sorry I'm not the smartest guy, but somehow I missed this in terms of understanding clearly where does it fall? Is it materials that we are, looking at and the land use? Or does that get into, as other members were alluding to, like, I like this, I don't like that? It was very foggy for me, to be honest, like, in going through that. And I just, if somebody could summarize that, I don't mean this to be a long debate, if I could just get clarity on that, I would really appreciate it.
Ashley, is that something that our UDO kind of goes into, or the powers of a plan commission member? Is it tied to those 5 criteria for a rezone?
So I don't believe it's in your UDO.
Not yet.
I
That's one of
believe it is.
Hatchet.
Okay, it's in the past.
Let him hatch.
So, in my understanding, what the plan commission looks at, for zoning map changes, aka rezones, aka PUD ordinances, are compliance with the comprehensive plan, the current conditions and character of structures and uses, most desirable uses, conservation property values, and responsible development and growth. If your comment can fit under that umbrella, then I think it's fair game. Like, definitely, if you hate porcelain tile and you say, I hate porcelain tile and this sucks because I hate it, like, that might be a little bit outside of this scope, but I think that there's.
Character of current structures, though.
Yeah.
What exactly does
The
that mean?
ones that are proposed, right, to be built.
In the surrounding area.
Like tonight I had mentioned, like, hey, you have this residential use directly in your backyard, right? So being cognizant of surrounding development and kind of that intentionality of the flow of how one development transitions to the next.
Okay.
I mean, a prime example, we faced this at the BZA the other day, is somebody is concerned about stormwater and what the drainage situation is gonna do, and it's a 30-minute conversation, and well, we don't get to talk about that in these meetings. We get to talk about land use and what that means and improving what can go on it. And then it's up to these highly astute individuals in numerous different departments to then worry about those other ancillary kind of ripples.
Okay. Okay.
So what was restate your question again?
I was trying to find clarity between I like this design or I don't like that material versus we're not here to design their buildings for them. We're here to speak about the land use. And so for me, it was just a little bit foggy in the meeting today as to trying to understand, and as a new person, right, getting an education on it. So my specific question was, what exactly where's our line? What exactly, can you provide clarity on, do we get involved with the design or the use? And the best I'm getting from so far is it has to, make sense to the area. We can say that, but if it's, I like gold versus silver, that's too much.
So each zoning classification has a criteria. And within that criteria, there's certain standards, and that's laid out in the UDO.
Okay.
So, yeah, like.
And I know you're in the process of changing those, right?
Yeah,
So I hate to point to a specific thing.
Yeah.
I guess what I was going to add too is every zoning district has architectural design standards in the UDO today. So when a petitioner brings something forward that is a part of a PUD or a rezone petition, that they have written into their ordinance language that, hey,
These materials have to be
we're gonna
used.
utilize,
It has to be within this
these
color
standards,
palette.
we're going
Like,
to.
do you guys outlaw EFS?
Yeah,
Or
we're limited.
limited, but
quantities.
if they were,
Yeah.
for instance, if there's a material that's limited or not allowed and they're proposing that, then yes, that's a criteria that you can use to say, hey, that's good.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So
Like if there's a requirement for all 4 sides have brick, and something's coming on that says 2 sides of brick, yeah, you're willing to say, no, that's not acceptable.
right, okay.
But under that same vein, we also have the authority to change that, authority is not a good word, but the ability to say, hey, we want it, we don't mind if you build 4 walls of metal sheets, but you gotta go get that past our city council if we recommend this in the first place, right? So it's not the Bible, so to speak, but it is a great kind of parameter of this is what we need to operate under.
You're giving a recommendation to them.
So in that scenario, if that ended up being the recommendation, metal is good on all 4 sides. My suggestion would be because we have standards that already exist that are to the contrary to that, if we're willing to say, yeah, we think that's okay, it has to be specific to that project in that area. Like, again, kind of go back to the look around, the character of the area around. If that's what's around, maybe it makes sense, right? Maybe we don't wanna force a brick building in the middle of a metal.
barns.
Yeah, I
Pole
mean,
barns,
maybe
right,
that
exactly.
will be more out
Yeah.
of place than, it may meet our standard, but it may be more out of place in the context of the area.
And real quick to piggyback on that, so two examples that popped in my mind real quick. One, West Fork Whiskey, when they came before us, their initial rendering was basically just pulled right out of something to go in Indianapolis. It was very industrial looking, so you're putting that in the middle of a cornfield. So at the time, the APC, feedback was, we want something that fits the character of the area better. And so that's when they represented the more barn looking structure that is today.
Okay.
So there's that, and then the second example being Meyer, when it first came through, and this was before I was on EPC, but when it came through, I think you were on council at the time, so you, Bob. It came through, it got, I believe, a negative recommendation from APC because APC, and you were on APC.
Yeah, they wanted this sign that was like literally a sign of size of like.
As Meyer is known to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were a difference of, they were changing the 32 overlay, typical design standards and so forth, so that went to council, worked through some things and ended up getting approved with the variance of the materials they use today. Yeah, so you can get over twofold, you can get over the hump of APC, but then council sometimes has a completely different mindset. But it is difficult teetering that line, and I was in your shoes 4 years ago as well, of learning where am I getting too far into the weeds of designing a building? And that became a running joke for us, unfortunately, over the last 4 years, we would become a design committee, and that's not what we want to do. So to me, anything that's fair game is the character exhibits that surround the parcel that is currently being discussed. So what's already existing, and then also the character exhibits, as I mentioned tonight, of what they're proposing.
Okay.
So, they were proposing two different type of styles, and so trying to accomplish, okay, do we want the character exhibits that they had already previously proposed, or the new character exhibit of, the Greek versus the industrial?
Yeah, hey, I'd like to add something to that though. Just because they put in a character exhibit and it's up here, doesn't mean they have to do it. They gotta get close, right? And I mean, they don't like.
Depends on how the ordinance is written.
Okay.
I mean, if it's a PUD, it's a little.
UD for sure, yeah.
They have to be substantially compliant with it, is that the word now?
Yeah, we've seen a couple of different phrases used, substantially compliant, similar, substantially similar, or something like, yeah.
Okay.
No, that makes sense though.
But yeah, so it gives a little bit of flexibility, I think, in final design of a building, cause oftentimes these things have not been to the point where we saw tonight, where it's actually been designed by an architect or something, and they're starting to put, an actual site together, so. To provide a little bit of flexibility for the designers, frankly, it's a little bit of subjectiveness there that, but you're right, I mean, it's gotta be pretty darn close, and they have to be demonstrating all or most of the elements that we can clearly kind of pick out of those character exhibits. I mean, we're looking for those things. And if they don't have them, we're calling them on it, and they have to include it, or they're coming back to you later for an amendment to build the building they wanna build.
This might sound like a dumb example, but say all that they have in their character exhibits are different shades of red of what they're wanting, but then someone here says, oh, but I want it to be blue or whatever. Well, that wouldn't be germane to the discussion because it's not something that's before us. That's where you're getting to the line of being the design committee.
Got it.
You know, an example tonight, you say, hey, capacity's 360, then walk me through the parking, right? I mean, there's gotta be some math behind that. If capacity, I understand, hey, it's an event center, it can be, but when you speak to a capacity number, there's gotta be some math behind that, because that could be a big miss.
That is
Parking
covered in our
only goes to
UDO.
TAC.
It
I mean,
is, parking
Yeah.
is covered,
Gee,
yeah.
Yeah, it goes to TAC though, right? I mean, we're approving the use therein, and then again, it's that trickle effect of it's going to different levels of regulatory process to then determine, okay, it's built according to UDO standard.
Yeah, that's, so parking specifically is kind of covered by the UDO. If there's something specific or different that we want them to do, then that's where we'll be writing that into the PUD or they will be. If it's something different than what our UDO otherwise requires.
So the only reason I see that would be an issue is like if they had, I'm just throwing it out there, like some steakhouse restaurant that required 60 spots. They have an event, the restaurant's open at the same time, now you got a bunch of overflow into somewhere else. Do we even deal with that, or is that a TAC issue and said, well, they were allowed to approve it, so, you know, is that even something in our wheelhouse, or no, those are. Cause a lot of it came up today about one building, how many sections, can it be this, and,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I don't wanna keep everybody's time here with this, I can just totally bother the hell out
I
of
mean, I
Robert.
think the simple answer to that
Just your
question-
time.
Yeah,
President.
it's your time, nobody.
Am I thrilled to know
Just
that?
you.
Have him come help you mulch and you'll answer all the questions you want.
Yeah.
There you go,
If the APC is approving like a hotel next to another hotel and there's obviously not enough parking, then I think that that is definitely a valid.
It's like site specific, I mean, if,
Yeah,
and
and
you, the staff's gonna be looking at to what's around it or what is proposed to be on it or what could be on it in order to address it. And again, I could talk about this all night too, but the other thing that I noticed that sometimes the difference is to, you know, like if you come in at the beginning stages and like you're just reviewing the use and then a development plan's gonna come back to you later. So that's when you kind of get the time to get into all these details. Whereas like on some, not every project, but some project you're just like a rezone or something, a map change. You're looking to see if the use fits within the surrounding area, and usually the petitioner has an idea of why they want the zoning to be changed, but maybe they don't have a full, you know, schematic drawing done yet. I mean, that's probably because, you know, they just needed to get the use approved, and then they're gonna come back before they build it to you for the development plan.
Yeah, because they didn't wanna invest a bunch of money into it.
Right, I mean,
before
practically speaking, they didn't wanna spend the design budget if they're not gonna get the use.
yeah, you'll see some PUDs that literally just have bubbles.
Yeah.
Just bubble diagrams.
And it's frustrating sometimes because you wanna see what the product is, but you really just need to trust the process and improve the use.
Yeah, because down the line, that's
It
when
will.
that stuff will
Yeah.
get really vetted.
Your questions are on point, and it's not only
Absolutely.
because you're new to APC.
Yeah.
I think the criteria have some vagueness, perhaps, and that's a good thing, but if you take them too far, we could kill development. You could say, if anything's not pink, I don't think that that's responsible development. I hope that's not your perspective.
If you don't
You could really apply those any way you want, but we're trying to set the caliber, and we're trying to make it congruous reasonably with what's around it, you know, and you gotta apply some judgment. Your questions are right on the mark, though.
Good.
I mean, to your point, it's even the rabbit hole of, you know, our first meeting, we got into a rabbit hole of how much does this house cost? Well, to me, it's not responsible development to build $1 million home, but that's not in our purview to determine.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Nor do we know what some
Very good
fool might be
questions.
willing to pay for something
Exactly.
worth that much. All right,
Real quick, get into my council
yeah, let's
recap.
move on to the next bullet point. We've exhausted plan commission member comments pretty thoroughly tonight. We did well. Sometimes we gloss right over
I'm
that.
just saying,
We have
Mr.
none.
Vice President walked in today and said this may be the shortest meeting we've ever.
I jinxed
And the
this
trajectory
badly. I'm
went
gonna,
down.
I'm gonna say that again.
I'm sorry. Really, pal.
It's like saying ER's quiet.
Strike that for the record, please. Whatever the record there is.
City council liaison.
Yeah, last
You had a
week-
meeting, you did a lot.
Yeah, we did a lot. It was our longest meeting yet this year. So, under miscellaneous items, we had proclamations for Arbor Day and National Volunteer Appreciation Month. We had some financial presentations from Bondry Consulting. If you are interested in those discussions, please watch the meeting, because some of it just go. And then also, it was announced for our finance / oversight committees. They're basically gonna be
one because Tam, Dart, and Wanninger are gonna be on both of them. Under old business, we approved Ravinia, Winterberg, Townsend Union, and the Ackerson amendment. Two things I did wanna note real quickly. For Ravinia, there was a request by a counselor to add a fishing pier, so that was under petitioner commitments, developer commitments. And then for Townsend Union down here, a counselor wanted a additional 3 feet of brick, so that was also a commitment. And just briefly, that's why I was getting a little bit deeper into my counselor hat, because, you know, I'm trying to have as much communication with my fellow counselors as I can to try to alleviate issues like last week of last minute things. I want to take care of those as quickly as possible, so it can be well vetted and taken care of, and also something that can be addressed here at this body as opposed to being last minute. So that's why I'm just trying to ask as many questions that one of the other guys might mention to me, what about this, what about that? So just wanting to evaluate everything. For North Point 2, that was the hefty portion of the discussion, and really it revolved around the MOU, which again wasn't germane to this body. So that's something that's just gonna have to be figured out, and hopefully we'll be able to approve that come next meeting. For new business, we had iBeach 31, which has been previously approved, but they're gonna be adding some additional land to it. That'll be to us next month, and as well as the Westfield Washington Schools Event Center, which is the remodel of the current library, and Vita of Westfield, which is somewhat the northwest corner of 32 and Spring Mill, a little bit further north, which is a 55+ community that will also be to us. So that was it. That was it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
BZA.
BZA, we had 4 items, 3 of which, surprise, surprise, dealt with pools. So you're gonna be cutting down our agenda after the next APC meeting, which will really make it exciting. And then the 4th one, Billy kinda talked about out of 161st and Ditch Road area. Gentleman had about a 3.5 acre parcel with 1 house, wants to subdivide it into 3 acre approximate lots with a house on each one. Neighbors all worried about water runoff. There's a little pond on the site which is not part of the drainage system, but when it rains, it goes into the pool, into the pond, and then all over their property. So he's gonna have to, I think, we did approve it, because land use, it was okay. But I think when they go before the city engineer and they have to deal with drainage, it's gonna be interesting to follow, because drainage is not a cheap proposition for development, and particularly on a little three lot development to mitigate all that runoff, might be more than he thinks it's going to be. So, that's basically it.
Water goes where water goes, cause it's dumb and lazy. It goes downhill.
Water, dumb and lazy.
That's the line of the evening.
But committee didn't meet, but we have an upcoming meeting, so nothing else to report there. Community Development Department, do you have any words of wisdom for us tonight?
Happy tax day.
I hope that's not surprising, but
If you haven't filed, you have 3 hours and 1 minute to get your return.
Bigger conference session.
And happy Caitlin Clark Day.
Yes.
Yeah, she just got the draft while we were in.
Yeah.
It happened. I saw my watch get, the watch updated me while I was sitting here.
Congratulations, Indiana.
No other words in this.
Alright, fellow commissioners, we're down to the point where we have the opportunity to adjourn if we're so inclined.
I'll second.
Man, everyone wants to get out of here.
4th, 5th.
Randomly.
Just question mark.
Motion,
Oh, it was Mr.
and
Bunkerfist.
McCarty seconded it.
Yeah.
We're all present, so we can do this on a voice vote. Everybody in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to adjourning? Anybody abstaining from adjourning?
Abstaining from adjourning.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
It's only 8:59. We are adjourned.
Now that this meeting's over, I have 2 things.
Number 1, did you find the name tags for City Hall?